I don't lose to rookies. 4 words that shocked the WWE. November 1991, Hulk Hogan had just refused to lose the championship to The Undertaker. But what happened in that backstage corridor 20 minutes later would break the most powerful man in wrestling. Survivor Series 1991, Detroit, Michigan. Joe Louis Arena. The backstage area of one of wrestling's most historic venues buzzes with controlled chaos. But in a private corridor behind the main backstage area, a confrontation is about to unfold that will change the power dynamics of professional wrestling forever. Hulk Hogan stands in that corridor, his massive frame filling the narrow space between concrete walls painted an institutional green. At 38 years old, he is no longer the fresh-faced rookie who had captured his first WWE Championship 7 years earlier, but he remains the most recognizable and powerful performer in the company. His blonde mustache is perfectly groomed, his tan is deep and even, and his confidence radiates from every pore. He's wearing his iconic red and yellow wrestling attire, but tonight there's something different about his demeanor, something that suggests the man beneath the character is struggling with forces beyond his control. This is Hulk Hogan at the peak of his power and influence within WWE, but also at a crossroads that he doesn't fully understand yet. The wrestling business is changing around him, evolving in ways that will eventually challenge everything he believes about his role as the company's top star. New characters are being introduced, darker storylines are being explored, and Vince McMahon Jr. is beginning to experiment with a different kind of sports entertainment that doesn't always revolve around the traditional good guy versus bad guy formula that has made Hulk famous. One of these new characters is Mark Calaway, known to wrestling audiences as The Undertaker. At 6'10" inches tall and 328 pounds, The Undertaker is an imposing physical presence, but more than that, he represents something entirely new in the WWE universe. He's not just another big man or another villain, he's a supernatural character who seems to exist outside the normal rules of wrestling storytelling. He doesn't speak much, he moves with an eerie deliberation that unsettles audiences and fellow performers alike, and he possesses what appears to be an immunity to pain that defies logical explanation. The Undertaker made his WWE debut exactly 1 year ago at the 1990 Survivor Series, and in that short time he has established himself as one of the most unique and compelling characters in the company's history. He has defeated established stars, survived attacks that would hospitalize normal men, and developed a mystique that transcends traditional wrestling kayfabe. Audiences don't just suspend disbelief when they watch The Undertaker, they seem to genuinely believe that he might actually be the supernatural entity he claims to be. But tonight, The Undertaker faces his greatest challenge yet, and it's not about defeating another opponent in the ring. Tonight, he must prove that he deserves to be treated as an equal by the man who has been the undisputed king of WWE for the better part of a decade. Tonight, he must convince Hulk Hogan that the old guard is ready to pass the torch to a new generation of performers. The tension began building 3 hours earlier, during the mandatory pre-show talent meeting that takes place before every major WWE event. Vince McMahon, Jr. stood at the front of a cramped conference room, addressing the assembled wrestlers with his usual combination of enthusiasm and barely controlled intensity. He outlined the evening's matches, discussed promotional opportunities, and reminded everyone about their responsibilities as representatives of the WWE brand. But when he got to the main event, the WWE Championship match between Hulk Hogan and The Undertaker, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. McMahon's voice took on a more serious tone as he explained the planned outcome of the match, the storyline developments that would follow, and the long-term booking decisions that had led to this moment. Hulk, McMahon said, looking directly at his biggest star, "You're going to put Taker over tonight. Clean finish, no controversy, no excuses. The Undertaker is our new champion." The silence that followed was deafening. Every wrestler in that room understood the significance of what they had just heard. Hulk Hogan, who had rarely lost matches during his entire WWE run, who had defeated every major challenger put in front of him, who had been the centerpiece of the company's expansion from a regional territory into a global entertainment empire, was being asked to definitively lose to a character who had been with the company for exactly 12 months. For most wrestlers, this would have been a simple matter of business. In professional wrestling, losses are part of the job, and performers are expected to follow the creative direction they are given regardless of their personal preferences. But Hulk Hogan is not most wrestlers. He has creative control written into his contract, a level of influence over storylines and outcomes that is virtually unprecedented in the wrestling business. More than that, he has spent years carefully cultivating his character's invincibility, building a brand that depends on the audience's belief that Hulk Hogan always finds a way to win when it matters most. After the meeting ended and the other wrestlers dispersed to prepare for their matches, Hulk remained in his chair, staring at the floor, processing what he had just been told. The request wasn't just about losing a wrestling match, it was about acknowledging that his era of dominance was coming to an end, that WWE was ready to build its future around a different kind of performer and a different kind of storytelling. For 20 minutes, Hulk sat alone in that conference room, weighing his options and considering the implications of what he was being asked to do. He thought about his contract, his leverage within the company, and his responsibility to protect the character that had made him famous. He thought about the Undertaker, who he respected as a performer, but didn't necessarily trust as a long-term investment for the company's future. Finally, Hulk made a decision that would create the most significant backstage confrontation of his WWE career. He walked out of that conference room, found a WWE producer, and delivered a message that sent shockwaves through the entire organization. "Tell Vince, I'm not doing it. I don't lose to rookies, especially not for the championship." The message reached Vince McMahon within minutes, and his response was swift and unequivocal. Get Hogan and Taker to meet in the back corridor. Which brings us to this moment. 7:15 p.m. on a Wednesday evening in Detroit, with Hulk Hogan standing in a narrow corridor behind the Joe Louis Arena, waiting for a confrontation that will test everything he believes about power, respect, and the wrestling business. The Undertaker appears at the far end of the corridor, like a specter materializing from the shadows. Even in his wrestling gear, even without his trademark hat and coat, he moves with the same deliberate, unsettling pace that has become his signature. His long black hair hangs around his shoulders, his pale skin seems to absorb the harsh fluorescent lighting, and his eyes, those cold, calculating eyes, never leave Hulk's face as he approaches. At 38, Hulk Hogan has faced every type of opponent imaginable. He has wrestled giants and technical masters, brawlers and high flyers, legends and rookies. But something about the Undertaker's approach makes him uncomfortable in a way he hasn't experienced in years. This isn't the usual pre-match posturing or the familiar dance of egos that characterizes most backstage interactions. This feels different. This feels real. The Undertaker stops 6 feet away from Hulk, well outside normal conversational distance, but close enough that his presence fills the narrow corridor like a physical force. When he speaks, his voice carries the same otherworldly quality that it does during his televised appearances, but there's something underneath it, something human and determined that Hulk has never heard before. "Hogan," the Undertaker says, his voice barely above a whisper but somehow carrying more authority than any shout could have managed. "We need to discuss tonight." Hulk straightens to his full height, drawing on years of experience dealing with challenges to his position within the company. His voice, when he responds, carries the full weight of his status as WWE's top star and his confidence in his own ability to control situations through sheer force of personality. "Listen, Taker," Hulk says, his tone friendly but firm, "you're a good performer, and I respect what you've accomplished in your first year here. But I'm not dropping the championship to someone who's still learning the business. My character doesn't lose to rookies, and frankly, the fans aren't ready to see Hulk Hogan definitively beaten by someone they've only known for 12 months. The explanation is reasonable, delivered with the kind of political sophistication that Hulk has developed over years of navigating the complex power dynamics of the wrestling business. He's not insulting The Undertaker personally. He's simply explaining the business realities that make tonight's planned outcome problematic from his perspective. But The Undertaker's response is unlike anything Hulk has encountered in his entire career. Instead of arguing, instead of defending his credentials or making a case for why he deserves the victory, The Undertaker takes 2 steps closer. Now he's within arm's reach, and the temperature in the corridor seems to drop 10 degrees. "Hogan," The Undertaker says, and this time his voice carries a quality that makes Hulk's skin crawl. "You will respect this business. You will respect the creative direction you have been given, and you will respect me." The words are delivered without anger, without emotion, without any of the usual heat that accompanies backstage confrontations. They're stated as facts, as inevitable truths that Hulk can either accept or be crushed by. And for the first time in his WWE career, Hulk Hogan feels something he hasn't experienced since his early days as a struggling performer: genuine fear. Not fear of physical confrontation. Hulk is confident in his ability to handle himself in any kind of fight. This is something deeper, more unsettling. This is the fear that comes from encountering someone who operates by completely different rules. Someone who doesn't care about politics or leverage or contractual obligations. Someone who simply expects reality to bend to their will. The Undertaker continues, his pale eyes never breaking contact with Hulk's. "You have been the champion. You have had your time. But time ends for everyone, Hogan. Even for you. Tonight, in that ring, you will lay down for The Undertaker. You will make me look strong. And you will do it, because that is what this business requires of you." The corridor falls silent, except for the distant sounds of the arena filling with fans, the muffled announcements over the PA system, and the rhythmic thudding of Hulk's own heartbeat. He has been in countless tense situations during his career, but nothing has prepared him for this moment, for this feeling of being completely outmaneuvered by an opponent he had underestimated. Hulk tries to reassert control of the situation, drawing on his experience and his status within the company. "Look, Mark," he says, using The Undertaker's real name as a way of bringing the conversation back to a human level, "we can work something out. Maybe a controversial finish, maybe some interference. We don't have to do this the hard way." But The Undertaker shakes his head slowly, and when he speaks again, his voice carries a finality that makes Hulk's stomach tighten with anxiety. "There is no controversy tonight. There is no interference. There is only you and me, and the moment when you realize that your time is over." The psychological warfare is masterful, and Hulk recognizes it even as he falls victim to it. The Undertaker isn't just refusing to negotiate. He's making it clear that negotiation isn't even an option, that the outcome has already been determined by forces beyond anyone's control, including Hulk's. For 30 seconds, the two men stand in that corridor, separated by 3 feet of space but worlds apart in their understanding of what is about to happen. Hulk's mind races through his options with the desperate speed of someone who realizes they have been completely outmaneuvered. He could walk away right now, refuse to participate in the match, use his considerable contractual leverage to force a different creative outcome. His contract contains specific language about creative control, provisions that have protected him from unwanted storyline developments for years. But as he looks into The Undertaker's eyes, those cold, pale eyes that seem to see straight through his soul, he realizes that none of those options will actually solve the fundamental problem he's facing. This isn't about contracts or creative control or business politics. This is about something much more primal and immediate. The recognition that he is no longer the most dangerous man in the building. The silence stretches between them, heavy with implications that go far beyond tonight's match. This is a changing of the guard moment, a passing of psychological power that will reshape WWE's backstage hierarchy. Other wrestlers will hear about this confrontation, will understand that Hulk Hogan's era of unquestioned dominance has ended. Hulk can feel his carefully constructed aura of invincibility cracking under the Undertaker's unwavering stare. For years, he has controlled situations through sheer personality, bending other performers to his will through charisma and star power. But none of those tools work against someone who doesn't care about conventional success measures. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Hulk feels his resistance crumble. The psychological pressure is overwhelming, and he realizes he has encountered someone stronger than him in ways that have nothing to do with physical strength. This is a battle of wills, and he has been comprehensively defeated. Finally, Hulk nods once, a barely perceptible movement that nevertheless communicates complete capitulation. "All right," he says quietly, "we'll do it your way." The Undertaker doesn't smile, doesn't acknowledge the victory, doesn't do anything that would suggest he's surprised by the outcome of their conversation. He simply nods once in return, turns, and walks back down the corridor with the same deliberate pace he had used to approach. Hulk remains standing in that corridor for another 5 minutes after the Undertaker disappears, trying to process what just happened and what it means for his position within WWE going forward. He has just been comprehensively outmaneuvered by a performer he had considered subordinate, and more importantly, he has discovered that his power within the company has limits he hadn't previously acknowledged. That night, in front of 23,000 screaming fans at the Joe Louis Arena, Hulk Hogan lost the WWE Championship to The Undertaker in a match that shocked the wrestling world and marked the beginning of a new era in sports entertainment. But the real story wasn't what happened in the ring. It was what happened in that backstage corridor, when America's wrestling hero learned that even legends must sometimes bow to forces greater than themselves. Years later, wrestling historians would point to that Survivor Series as the moment when WWE fully transitioned from the Hulk Hogan era to something darker and more unpredictable. But for those who witnessed the backstage confrontation, the real story was simpler. It was the night when Hulk Hogan met his match in terms of pure, unshakable will. The Undertaker's championship reign lasted only 6 days, but the psychological victory he achieved in that corridor would last much longer. He had proven that respect in the wrestling business isn't automatically granted, sometimes it has to be taken.